Welcome to BizBites, brought to you by Com Together, helping businesses like yours build their brand through telling amazing stories to engage and grow audiences on multiple platforms. Well, hello everyone, and welcome to another episode of BizBites. Today I have with me Sean, and I'm going to let him introduce himself in just a minute. Sean and I have got to know each other, I guess, through a mutual connection that we've had, and we've been getting to know each other on and off for a few weeks now in the course of that community that we're both part of. But I thought it'd be great to really get to know a little bit more of the story behind Sean and what makes him tick. He's a graphic designer, and some of the stuff that I've seen so far is excellent, and I'm looking forward to getting to know him a little bit better. So, Sean, if you want to introduce yourself to the audience.
Thanks, Anthony. And yeah, I really appreciate the invitation. So my name's Sean McCaul. I run a small studio called Citizen by Design, and we specialize in branding and visual communications. Basically, what I'd like to think we do is we help people grow their businesses and inspire their audiences. And we're doing that by design, which is things like logos, brochures, marketing material, social media, and websites, just stuff like that.
Yeah, there's a lot of stuff there, and I look at, that's a space that's very dear to me, and we were talking a little bit beforehand about it, that branding's been something that's been part of my business from the beginning, but we are not graphic designers. We are the marketing part that is that feeds into the design agency, and I love that space, and I want to I'm going to come back to the story behind your business in a little while, because I know I've heard a little bit of it, and it's a great story, but I want to just talk to you a little bit about the idea of design in this day and age, when there's so many tools out there that people are grabbing for free in some cases, or paying small amounts. You've got tools like Canva that are out there. People are getting easy to get subscriptions to the Adobe suite. If you got half an idea of what you're doing, but to anyone that uses Adobe, by the way, that has not had some kind of formal training in it, you're kidding yourself, because that thing can do so much stuff and you've no idea unless you've trained in it. And I think in this day and age as well of people all over the world being able to do stuff seemingly on a dime, the value of great design for me has actually increased, because there's so much poor design out there at the moment, with people not investing what they should in it.
Yeah, do you know what? There's been a lot of change, particularly like the last 5-10 years in particular. But as we were mentioning a little bit before the chat, I actually don't see it as a bad thing that the business owners and clients that have that option, if they want to do it themselves in Canva, or if they want to use AI to try to create something, I think it's great. I don't think that marketing and everything else should be kind of like a gatekeeper, if you know what I mean. Like, you have to use professional designers and things like that. But like what you said there, Anthony, it does. I feel it doesn't take away my business. It takes away people that don't want to spend money on me doing their work. But it then elevates it once they get to a certain level with their business. Once they realize, you know what, I don't want to do all this myself, then they seek out a designer. I think for bad designers, it's probably the change up that's happened the last few years is going to be bad or not good for them. But for anyone that's really good or talented at the work, and they've got an identity, they've got a style, and they've got skill, you will still always find work. I think that's the key message for me.
Yeah, I mean, I agree with you, and I think also that when you have there is often a world of difference between good and okay design and great design, and I think that the one that people get when we're talking about this is photography. Photography's been through this phase very much because it was whatever it was 15, 20 years ago that we all started carrying a camera in our pockets. Has that automatically made us professional photographers? No. I think anyone that scrolls through their phone and looks at all of the photos in there, you've probably got, several thousand photos sitting in there. And how many of them would match it with a professional photographer? Well, you may have fluked a couple, and it's probably a fluke. And I think that can happen as well with design. I know over the years that I've seen a lot of poor design And for me as well, that happens because of the briefing process is not right. That people people design for themselves rather than for their audience, for starters.
That's true. And that actually brings probably onto the branding sort of topic. And like your business there, your branding and marketing, I think that's a really positive strength to combine the two. Because I'm feeling, whilst I'll say I'm branding and visual communications, I'll completely understand if a business owner is sitting thinking themselves, this branding thing sounds like I'm being made to pay for something I don't really need, or the worst that they're trying to pull a fast one with me or something, because they're thinking themselves, all I really want is marketing. I just want sales. But branding, when it's done well, it's it will add focus to your markets, and it gives you identity. It gives you all the things that you've mentioned in your business about building relationships, authenticity. That's the key thing. So sometimes, and it is one of these things where it's hard to convince somebody that that's something that they need. But if somebody does do a bit of research and understands a little bit about branding, they'll see the value that a brand focused designer, or like what you mentioned earlier, like good design. That's then when you can go like, this is the reason why it's good design, because it's giving us a better identity. It's connecting us with our customers, and it's giving us building our reputation. It's not just about making it look pretty. It's actually, it's building our whole audience, and it's getting sales.
Yeah, I think the important thing for me about really great design is that it adds value to the story that you're trying to tell as a brand. That, you know, your name and your strapline, tagline starts to tell some of that. Sometimes you've got some other words that sit alongside of it as well. But the design should add value to that story. It doesn't always have to be literal. It needs to add some value to it. And what one business does not make it relevant to yours necessarily either. I think I remember sitting with a client many years ago, and we were embarking on a rebranding exercise, and we were sitting in a cafe, and he pointed behind me and he said, "I like that logo." I'm looking at, what's that logo? It was the NAB, right? The National Australia Bank. And there's nothing wrong with the NAB logo. It's fine for the NAB. And I kind of looked back at him and I went, well, there's nothing I can give you from that. So we're not going down that path at all. The color, for starters, is completely wrong for your business. So let's ignore that one. The font bears no relationship to what you're trying to achieve as well. I'm not quite sure what we can glean from that. And I think equally there are, I think you might appreciate this, and a number of years ago involved in a branding exercise, and we went through a very thorough process. There was market research. There was a whole lot of stuff done before we arrived at this, and everyone absolutely loved it. But I had one manager who just decided that she liked fluorescent pink, and everything was in fluorescent pink. And we're like, but that's nothing to do with the brand, and the brand colors is kind of clashing. And it's really, no, I said, it's not relevant what you like. It's what's, that's, I think, is the key, is that more often than not, when businesses are designing, and it doesn't matter whether it's a brand or then subsequently a website or a brochure or any of those materials, it's designing for your audience. And more often than not, the person who owns the business, the people who are running the business, are not the core audience. So therefore, more often than not, what they think is actually not relevant.
That's very true. This is an experience I've had a fair number of times, where someone's personal preferences kind of influencing what the final design will be. But I think at that stage, it's just, rather than trying to tell them you're wrong in any way, which is not going to help, I try to give them a view of, well, who is your customer? And then you try to create this visual sort of persona, is what they call it, so they can go, well, okay, well, this customer here, for example, and you're showing them maybe a picture and you're saying, all right, Dave, would Dave connect with this logo and brand? And you're just trying to get them to step away from what they like and what their personal preference is, and to try and see it, like you say, from the customer's perspective and viewpoint. Because at the end of the day, they do want their business to be a success. They want to they want to grow, they want to make more sales, and just trying to take that step away, whilst they're completely valid opinions on the other side, going, but this is my business and I'm having control. But just trying to inch them forward to, as you say, seeing it from the customer's perspective is always the best way to go.
And what I wanted to ask you as well is it always intrigues me with designers is what inspires you. And because I think that's a twofold question, because there's always the inspiration that just comes from things in general, because being a designer, no doubt you love looking at great design, but also then you've got okay, now we've got to do a brand. How do you get inspired? Because I'm sure that you've got stories over the years where you've had branding work that you've done and the business itself might be, for all intents and purposes, relatively boring, or not something that is of great interest to you as what they offer. So you're having to be inspired to deliver something that is going to work for them. And it's hard to quantify that at times.
It's true. As a graphic designer, the jobs can vary quite drastically. It's not always, and creating brand identities. One that came to mind, which is not some specialist, but it was a logo design for fuller bust bras. It was like called Sugar Candy and things like that. So it's not like, and I was doing the marketing and everything for this business for a period of time. I'm going like, a 30-odd-year-old Irish guy is doing the brand for this. It didn't kind of match up particularly what you would expect. But as designers, we get a brief and we got to do our best to sort of answer it. It all depends. The inspiration where you get it from will really depend on what the project is. Ones I've really enjoyed quite recently would be doing Gaelic football crests, which is just a lovely. I've even had Miami Celtic Supporters Club sort of messaging me today with like, let's get this logo done. So that's one where I can really get into. Now it's combining my interests and my passions into the design work. So that's a really key one. But as far as inspiration in a general sense, I do find that I've got a really big Pinterest account, which I don't really try to promote or say people follow me or anything like that. It's always an option for people to do that. But for me, it just everything I see on the internet or when I'm scrolling, I just save it. So I'm a bit of a magpie that way, trying to collect up all these resources. And then when you do get the opportunity you get this brief and you're like, oh, fantastic. Now I can go down this little rabbit hole that I've created all these visual assets. So I do get a lot of inspiration from looking at other design work as well, but also trying to go beyond what's today, trying to even go way back. As far back as I can go and try to, because otherwise you'll just find yourself repeating, or worst, you're just trying to copy someone else's work, which nobody really wants to do, but or worse, they don't want to be caught out at it. So what I find is like the more diverse your influences are for each design project, the better the end result could be. I'm more unique as well.
I can see that. And so this is a podcast, so people aren't going to see the visuals around there, but while I'm sitting here with a virtual background, probably just as much hiding the mess that's behind me, I do have a bird's eye view into Sean's living room, right?
Oh, it's me. This is my office here. So this is a self-contained office here. Right? But yeah, you're right. There's plenty going on in the background, isn't there?
There is, and I love the fact that you've got this collection of things. This a beautiful chair, a leather chair, and then you've got contrast with this globe that's in the background. Lots of plants, and pictures on the wall. It is this kind of, I can see that within that there's some inspiration, and of course a nice window into the outside as well, and to obviously some garden areas. So I can see that this space that you've created is in of itself an inspirational space.
Absolutely. There's basically not much wall space around that hasn't got something on it, and even I'm looking around everywhere. Yeah, everything has a place around, and but this is an office which is external to the house, which is great, and but it's a really cool space. It's like really big high pitched roof, and even there's artwork going all the way up from friends of mine and things, and lots of little Irish little trinkets to remind me of home as well. But a bit of a collector of things and try to get them where I can view them each day.
Yeah, and Yes, I'm sure listeners have picked up that not born and bred in Australia, that the with the accent there. So tell me a little bit about your backstory, Sean, because I know I've heard a little bit about it, but I want to explore a little bit more. So whereabouts did you grow up?
So I grew up in a small town called Oma in Northern Ireland. So yeah, so Ireland. I first came out here in 2003 on a holiday, and after that, it was about a 1 month holiday. And I kind of came back to Ireland thinking, "Do you know what, I'm going to get out to Australia again sometime." And then, yeah, it was January 2008. I remember New Year's Day, I kind of made the decision, right, I'm going to go to Australia this year and want to leave. And before I left, like during that year, I was working for a branding agency in Belfast, one of the biggest ones there. And over the course of the year, I started contacting design studios in Sydney and in Melbourne, and really got a really good response from the mail out and also some of the emails that I sent. But by the time I got out here in February 2009, it was the peak of the global financial crisis. Basically, work was very, very tight, and there's only one of the nine agencies that I met with that had a position available. They're called Hive Creative in South Yarra, and they're still going strong today. And the interview with them went really well. But at the very end, I remember them saying, "Look, we don't really understand your visa situation, and we're going to be doing more interviews next week." And I remember leaving that interview going like, "That's not the response I was hoping for." And I was back at the hostel that it was Friday night, having a beer and going like, "You know what? That's not what I wanted. I got to do something special to get this job." So over the course of the weekend, there was an English guy there, and I borrowed his little laptop, and I put together a package. And the package was like a shoebox, spray painted black with my business card on it. And inside there was my shoe, and there was a leaflet which I made up. And the leaflet had said, "Now I've got my boot in the door again. Let me make you an offer you can't refuse." And it was a 3 weeks work with a big asterisk on it, which was basically saying you just have to pay my hostel for the week. The thing was, I'd been traveling by this stage through Asia and Melbourne and Sydney by 8 months or so at this stage, and I was flat broke. If this didn't come off, I was about to go fruit picking. So this Italian backpacker dropped off a package. We went to St Kilda Beach, I remember. And about an hour or two later, I got a phone call, and it was Wayne from Hive. And he's like, "Yeah, look, that's brilliant. Let's take you up on your offer. Come on in tomorrow." That was good. But the thing was, that was about midday on Monday, and I started celebrating at that point. So I had a big Monday with the backpackers and came into work the next day 2 hours late. Tried to bluff them, saying, "Oh, I thought we said 11 o'clock." But anyway, bit of a dodgy start. But then they got me on a project, and that project it was a pitch tender for City of Melbourne, a campaign called Green Light Eat Right, which actually we won that tender, and it's still going today, actually 14 years later. But I'm very grateful to the team at Hive and Wayne and Davida in particular, because they done everything for me. They basically says, "Look, whatever it takes, we'll do. Yeah, we'll get you to stay here." And they funded my kind of permanent residency application, and they just supported me so much. I worked there for 7 years, and it's thanks to those guys that I got Australian citizenship, like about 2014. So only 5 years after being here, I was a full citizen. And when I left to create my own business, that's where I got the name Citizen by Design, just as a homage or whatever to the design industry and the people I met throughout the career, and get my citizenship because of my design profession.
I love that story. And it's such a great name as well. And the fact that it speaks to your truth, I think, is in itself inspiring. And I think it's a great way to start a branding agency, is to have a great brand yourself. And it starts with the story. There's a lot to sort through there, but just for a moment, take me back to the young Sean. Was graphic design what you always wanted to do? Was that an area that you were gravitating towards?
Yeah, do you know what? I have an older brother, and he was very, very talented artist, like really, really talented artist. But at school, I was always one of the best at art. But because of my brother Eamon and that, I sort of never really thought of myself as a good enough artist in that. But yeah, I was still in the class. But I remember, yeah, but graphic design isn't about art actually. So it's actually making most of your ideas and doing that. And actually, there's a story there's a story that comes to mind is the first kind of design job I ever done would have been when I was 8 years old. We were in a primary school, all boys primary school, and the older kids were doing a nativity play. And the younger kids, our job was to color in the cover of these programs that they're looking to sell to the parents. So this went on for about a week. And so picture on the front of the cover is just like Santa and on reindeers, just a coloring in page,
Mm-hmm.
just plain white. And there was going to be prizes available for whoever done the best designs and for whoever done the most. So also if you're picturing a little like sweatshop with all these 8-year-old kids coloring in books, I mean that's really what it was. But as soon as I knew there was a prize on offer, I was committed to this. And but I started coloring them in, and but then I started getting bored of that. So what I ended up doing then was, so this little reindeer scene with Santa on it, I started redoing the background. So one of the ones I can remember was a billboard, like the Coca-Cola, which you can imagine. So the reindeer is now coming out of the billboard. Another one was, oh, this is a gift tag on the top of a gift box, or this is a card sitting on a mantelpiece and things like that. So I started really, trying to create these different scenes and just to make it more interesting to myself. And yeah, I did actually do the most, and I got one of the best ideas. But for some weird reason, my mum went and picked me up from school on the day they were giving out the awards thing. I can't remember her ever picking me up from school early. And yeah, this day she did, and I was like, no, I don't want to go. They're going to give me my selection boxes. She was like, come on, I'll buy you one. Don't worry. But it wasn't the same, because then the teacher went and gave them out to someone else, and yeah, my first sort of bittersweet taste of a design job where I didn't get my rewards at the end of it.
Well, so you've been brought up in the school of hard knocks very, very early on in the piece. You want to get paid for the good work you do, right? That's
I felt I was owed something. That was for sure.
It's better to learn it at 8 years old than it is to learn it much later in life when it's worth considerably more, right? And what about your parents? Did they was like design and art? If you've got two people in your family who are in that way, does it come down through the family, or where does all the artistic stuff come from?
I'm actually not sure. My dad is a plumber, and I suppose the similarities there is that he was very independent, worked for himself, and people in the town used to always tell me, "Oh, he's like the best plumber in the town." Your dad. And my mum, she's basically looking after 5 kids because very busy with that. So that was the family life. But I've got a younger sister, but two older brothers and one older sister, and there was like a family tree and maybe 8-year gap to me. So I was really did take a lot. I learned so much from my older brothers and sisters because they were like teenagers and older when I was growing up. So all their music tastes, all the things they were into, and I kind of had very different. The two brothers were kind of polar opposites in certain ways, having their own identity, and my sister was somewhere in the middle. And so definitely got a lot from that. There was creativity, there was music and things like that. But I think it was really, we at house we were just encouraged to do whatever we want to do, as opposed to go and do what our parents done, if that makes sense. But then me coming behind those older brothers, those older siblings, I really took a lot from them.
Yeah, it's interesting, isn't it? Because you've got that kind of that ability to explore and create as you did, and then by the same token, those early learnings of learning that independence and wanting to be on your own. Because I think there are many industries, and graphic design is one of them, where it is, as you've experienced before, often easier to go and work for someone else. And you're in there, and someone else is charged with going out and winning the accounts. You're there and you're just given the brief, you're doing the design, so you're falling into that creative space that you like. So that whole idea of going out on your own is a difficult decision to make. And so was it always that fight for that wanting to be independent? Was that something you always wanted to do, or was there some, because it comes with a lot of pain trying to win clients all the time?
Yeah, you definitely, as a sole trader, run a small business, as you could testify, you have to wear a lot of different hats. You have to do lots of different roles. But I think the real catalyst that brought me to working for myself and for my own clients was that I'm living in Australia and I want to go to Ireland, and a 2-week holiday is just not enough time. So it's really travel that was the catalyst for me saying I need to I need to do work for myself. Like that was like I worked with the team at Hive for 7 years, and that was kind of the reason why I needed to move on, because I had to, yeah, just needed too much leave. That was like, and they were really supportive as well. That they did give me work when I went overseas and things like that. So as me, it's travel as well, and that flexibility. Actually, just this week, I'm going to be getting in the camper van. Some of my clients don't know this, but I'll still be doing work. I'm taking the laptop with me, but I'm going to take a road trip over to meet, to hang out with one of my old workmates from the Hive days, actually. So that's the flexibility where as soon as I park up, I can get on the laptop and get a bit of work done. There's another thing where it's not ideal to be working all the time and things like that, but I'm just very grateful and thankful that I actually do enjoy doing design work. It's still a thing that gives me a lot of joy and a lot of satisfaction when you create the work. That's why ultimately, if I was doing the traditional route of working in studio, I'd probably be creative director and doing presentations all the time, or doing that strategy thing. And that would be good. I mean, don't get me wrong, but I also just like creating. I like creating the logos. I like getting on the tools, as they say. So it's that sort of balance where working for myself, I get what I'm trying to feel is the best of both worlds, but it does come with extra pressure for sure.
Yeah, but the trade-off, as you say, is that ability to travel, and we can let everyone in on a little secret. By the time this episode airs, Sean will be well and truly back, and I'll be the one that will be away, and my clients won't know the difference. In fact, I'll probably almost be back by the time this one airs. But and I think that's the great thing, though, in the age that we live in now, that those tools are on your laptop. I think, even from a design point of view, it wasn't that long ago that taking a laptop and being able to do effective graphic design was not that easy, because the tools themselves were weighty in terms of the amount of space that they took up. You often had, external tools that you were having to take with you in order to make the designs effective and things. And now you can do it more or less with the comfort of a decent laptop. It is a game-changing idea. I know, even for me, being able to travel with my business, ignoring some time zone differences, the reality is what I've got at my fingertips is exactly the same as what I've got by physically sitting in an office. And that flexibility, which many of us can have in our business, is huge for not just our own lifestyle, but the inspiration. I think particularly in a creative area, I imagine that the way you will operate, having been out on a trip with the family in the camper van, is going to be better than if we just lock you into an office. For as inspiring as your office might be, locking you in there for the next few weeks is not going to be as helpful for your clients as you getting out.
It's true. And I've actually had some really great experiences as well, taking the laptop and working overseas. One was when my wife was doing her yoga teacher training in Rishikesh in India. Like, there's me doing a bit of work now. I didn't have a very good setup at that stage, but I did manage to create a stand-up desk by working in a cupboard to stand up. So there was doing. But the view when I went out onto the balcony, there was like the Himalayas, the foothills of the Himalayas, and the Ganges River coming down across. And I was actually working on the branding for a yoga festival called Wanderlust at the time. Not that it needed to be there for me to do the work, but there had a nice little connection there of being in the spiritual home of yoga and doing that. So that was just one of the nice experiences. But it's just great that you're able to still earn some money, be overseas, and be traveling, and just pay for everything you got to do. But once you finish your day's work, for me, being Irish now, when I'm back home, I'll be able to spend that time with family back at home. And it's really been an important part. And I'm very grateful for my career that it's given me that opportunity to, do work that people are generally happy with, and that they trust me to do the work, even if I'm not in the same city as them.
I think it's been a huge shift, in the last couple of years in particular, where it's not that the technology wasn't there before, because the technology has been there for some time. The issue has been one of trust. I think that there was a feeling, 5 or 6 years ago, that you don't have an office, a physical office in a building that is an office building. I'm not sure if we trust you. what do you mean you work from home all the time? Yeah, not sure if we, do that. Are you going to be as effective in what you do? Is it going to be, you're going to be off wandering around looking after kids and cooking dinner and doing other things instead of working on my stuff? Are we paying you to do all? There were all of those fears that have existed and to some degree still do. I think there are many businesses that are still trying to find that blend for their team between working from home and working in the office. But I think when you're working on your own as you are, it's just such a game-changing idea, as you said, with the travel and everything else. But on the flip side, the game changer is really the trust that people now have that you will get the work done. That I've found it fascinating that, I've been in business now for over 12 years. And I think in that 12 years, I've only once had someone request to come to my office. That's the amazing thing, because people want them to come to you more often than not when you're doing the kind of work that you and I do. So actually even having the office has always been an interesting idea that I've contemplated on several occasions and decided, well, that's not really a necessary part of the business itself. Yeah. But I just wanted to come back a little bit to design before we wrap things up. And because, we've talked a bit about branding and touched on things like websites, but I'm interested too in brochures and those ideas, like the brilliant idea that you had to get that first job at Hive is huge. And not many people would have thought of it, let alone had the gumption to pull it off. And I think that brochures often and the reason I'm tying these two together is because brochures often get a bad rap, right? Brochures often tick a box for people. And I think that when you get a great brochure, it can work beautifully with different concepts. And okay, you might not be putting your shoe in a box for every client. I'm sure you haven't done that with everyone, but I know I've put a plastic bone in a package for a client. So I do understand sometimes how merchandise and things can get you through. But I think brochures do get a bad rap, but there's a lot that you can do with them instead of just ticking boxes. If you understand a brand and you understand what they're trying to achieve, there's scope to move, and I think that can be a lot of fun. And fun doesn't always necessarily mean fun in the traditional way, but fun to work with in terms of exploring something different.
Yeah, do you know what? It's like I've even quite recently just done a 200-page book that's going to go into libraries and things like that. So there still is a good amount of print-based work, but just on the brochures itself, when I'm speaking with a client, I kind of make them realize, or at least have a discussion with them about how much value they can get, not just from this printed brochure, if that's what they wanted to do, but as in the amount of content that they're going to create, that we can then use each part of that into like social media. And you can also then, if you're going to print a few of them, to get them in the client's hands, which is going to have that sort of tactile that people's going to have it there and they can come back to it at any point in time. Because you know yourself, maybe if you're scrolling online and you think you've got someone's attention, well, their attention's gone the next second, something else pops on the screen. But for each brochure we do, that you can also still make that digital. You can still have the PDF online on your website. Other things that is being done is the interactive website or PDFs we're doing now too, where it has the clickable links and it has videos embedded and things like that. So that's the kind of thing I stress, is that it's never a good thing if you're going to create this brochure and that's it, printed and left and done. To get the most out of any marketing work that you do is try and get it across all them channels. Print is still a really viable one, a really strong one to get people's attention. But if you create something for print, I'd also still suggest you take all them bits and do it on a social media post every couple of weeks and things like that, and host it on your website as well as a downloadable PDF. So that's the thing. I know people have been saying for a long time print is dead, but I still do a fair amount of print work, and maybe that will change everything else, but I still like to create some sort of a narrative and a story that gets people's attention, take them through start to finish. So a lot of good brochures should do. That's there's still going to be a purpose for that. There's still going to be people that want that service.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that brochures definitely have a key place. And I think even printing them is hugely important for many businesses as well, because as people do less and less printing, the opportunity to stand out with printing something, particularly if it's quality, is even greater. And there's there's a number of great examples of that, and one that listeners of this podcast will be familiar with, a company called Send Handwritten, which designs amazing cards to send out and get those cut through in getting out to people, because stuff doesn't come in the mail. I mean, if we think about it, how much stuff do we actually get in the letterbox these days? Very little. True. And if you stand out with something that's quality, I'm not saying necessarily letterbox drop everybody, but that whole idea of getting something that you can actually lay your hands on is huge.
And it's back to what you said, Anthony. It's back to what you said at the start there, when you were stressing the whole good design. I think that is the key. If you're wasting paper and you're just creating some sort of marketing material, just sales pitch, that's just not good for anybody. But if you do invest the time if you're going to invest it into print, which is a more expensive medium than social media, I do think you should take the time and make sure it's something valuable that people want to keep. And like, if someone was to chat to me about a brochure, I'd maybe even have a conversation about that, whether it's the right thing to do and whether they really do need it. Because the last thing I even want to be producing is just wasteful advertising. Not really keen, but if you want to make something beautiful and that people will keep, then print's a really good way to go, and brochures particularly.
And just before we wrap things up, Sean, I wanted to ask you a question that I like to ask all my guests is an aha moment when you're working with clients and they really see the value in what you've done. Is there a point where you see the lights really switch on for clients that, traditionally speaking, or is it different for everyone?
Oh, it's different for everyone, but like some of my one client there is just sprung to mind, Genius People, and it's Chris. And I remember Chris when he was like, I haven't asked many people to do a little testimonial, only like 4 or 5. But I remember, and he said this to me in person anyway, but he was saying like, Sean's kind of taken everything out of my mind and created the brand that I wanted. And that's just like the positive thing I'm looking to do. I'm really hoping that when I finish working with any client or business, that they actually feel that it's theirs, that it's their ideas, that it's like they've helped create it, and they just have that pride. And then once I know that, I know it's been a good job, and yeah, everyone's happy, and that's a dream come true, really.
Fantastic. Look, Sean, thank you so much for sharing your insights and your story, which is a wonderful story. As we will, with all of our guests, we're going to include some information on how to get in contact with Sean via the show notes. And thank you so much for being an amazing guest on BizBites, Sean. Thanks,
Anthony. That was great.
And everyone, we look forward to having your company on the next episode of BizBites. BizBites is brought to you by ComTogether for all your marketing needs, so you can build your brand, engage audiences on multiple platforms. Go to comtogether.com.au, follow the links to book an appointment for a free consultation.